Hi, I'm Ovik Roy with Roy Healthcare Research, and I'm here with Jeff Yordon of Sagent Pharmaceuticals, an Illinois-based specialty pharmaceuticals company, which has a very interesting business model. So, Jeff, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the unique things that you do.
Sure. Very non-traditional. The model's idea is to try to build a portfolio as quickly as you possibly can, and we did that through partnerships. At this point in time, we have 48 partners in 23 different countries, all of which have special skill sets and have the ability to develop all sorts of different injectable drugs as well as different delivery systems. So unlike most startup companies which only have vials available, we have the capability of making premixed bags, syringes, vials, ampules, emulsions, suspensions, even auto syringes. So that's the idea of the model. Has it worked? In a very short period of time, we already have 34 products on the market, over 101 SKUs, with 82 products pending at the FDA right now.
And why do you think it's such an advantage to have a diverse network of manufacturers as opposed to doing it all in-house?
If we look at my last position, I was president of a company called American Pharmaceutical Partners, which was sold to Fresenius for $5.5 billion about 8 years ago. Traditionally, they had two facilities. They could make vials. They had 75 people doing R&D, and they could do about 5 products a year. In our model, we have 2,500 people doing development, so really the only constraints that we have on development is how much money we have to spend. We can make every kind of product there is, and we have right now 37 facilities have been approved by the FDA in our consortium, so we have an enormous amount of capacity for a young, small company.
And obviously, if you have a diverse range of manufacturers, you're going to get lower cost of goods. Presumably, you have to pay them some fee. Does that all balance out, or do you tend to get about similar margins or higher or lower margins with that?
That's a great question. The vision always was, if you're going to be partnering with people, the overall margin will be less than what a traditional company, certainly less than what I had in the past. But the other side of that is our overhead is tiny. So once you get to some critical mass and once you're starting to generate real profits, we think that will kick in. One of the visions was that we could take this company to an enormous amount of revenue with probably an employee base of 120 people. To give you an idea, one of our major competitors has over 15,000 employees. So there's a huge, you can start to think about what happens when you get some critical mass.
And you don't participate in the paragraph 4 litigation bonanza. You really focus on pretty straightforward, high visibility projects. What's the thought process behind that?
First and foremost was we simply at the beginning didn't have enough money to participate. If you're going to challenge a patent, the minute that you submit, you're going to get sued, you're going to start incurring expenses. If you're going to do 505(b)(2)s, there's a lot of expense to it as well as fees that you have to pay the FDA. Once we went public last April, we've changed our risk profile a bit, and we've started doing some P4s. In fact, we had our first settlement about 8 months ago. We started doing 505(b)(2)s, and now we're actively pursuing some M&A targets.
What kind of M&A targets are you thinking about?
We believe right now that there's a lot of companies out there who have a product or two and have built infrastructure around the capabilities of introducing those products. We think a lot of them, the product is never going to achieve what they need to achieve. If we were to take a product like that into our model, not have 150 people basically selling this to physicians, instead using our relationships with GPOs and our relationships with physicians, even though the overall revenue wouldn't be as high, the margin would be fantastic, and these would be winners for us, whereas some of the companies, which will go unnamed, they're not going to probably be able to achieve. We're also looking at products less than 100 million that are with major pharma companies, that these would be considered very small products for them, and we're starting to actively begin to talk to those companies about divesting those type of products.
One of your big products, your largest product right now actually is heparin. When you started this company in 2006, the regulatory situation on heparin was pretty chaotic. There were a lot of supply issues in China. What was your experience with that, and how do you think about that market going forward?
The minute we realized that there was only one player, and that player had raised the price 600%, that was enough initiative. And the next day I was on a plane going to China and sourced a raw material source that I was aware of that had been supplying crude material to one of the large European manufacturers of low molecular weight heparin. Over a period of years, of 1 year, I'm sorry, with some of our people in their plant, we were able to get them approved as an API supplier. And in about a 15-month period, through an unbelievable effort on the part of our company, we were able to introduce the product. At that point in time, there were only two players, American Pharmaceutical Partners and ourselves. Since then, Hospira has entered, Westward Laboratories, which is a division of Hikma, a Yordon company, and Pfizer has entered. So there's been a lot of pressure on price. It's an important product. We don't want to exit from it, but it certainly is not a product that's going to get you where you want to go in terms of margin.
One of the other areas that you spend a lot of time on is injectable oncology drugs. And as you know, there's been a huge problem with shortages for these products. What's your take on why this shortage is happening?
You know, there's been a tremendous amount of articles written and all sorts of diverse opinions on why the shortages are in place. In my opinion, there's a limited amount of capacity. These are difficult products to manufacture, particularly in trying to protect your employees while you're making these toxic products. The reality is, when President Obama was addressing this problem late last year, the one thing he didn't address is in 2003, the government had passed a new Medicare law capping the reimbursement of all of these oncology products at a price that was the lowest it's ever been. Now, the sheer dynamics are pretty simple. If a hospital has a majority of Medicare patients, that cap is extremely important to them. I can tell you that today, and we're talking now 9 years later, the API price alone sometimes exceeds the cap. So the reality is very simple. If you can't convince physicians or a hospital that they'll have to ask the patient to pay some additional money out of their pocket, it's impossible to make any money on those products. We have developed a very unique strategy. I have been like a fundamental Baptist preacher for the last year, talking about the fact that people are chasing price in a market that they should be chasing supply. So we're going to put the first innovative contract together that we've ever seen. We are going to absolutely guarantee supply on a bunch of products, and in return, we want to have a guarantee that we will get a fair price for that. So we're not going to be the highest, we're not going to be the lowest, we're going to make a reasonable margin. That should go into effect in the next couple of months, and it'll be very interesting to see all of these customers who have been crying how difficult it is to operate their business because they don't have the drugs. How are they going to react when one of our competitors comes in at a penny less and they're supposed to be compliant to the contract? It'll be interesting to see.
To what degree do you think that there's been some speculation in the media as to, or discussion of the FDA's role in all this, that the FDA can be sometimes tough on manufacturers? How do you think of that? Is it really just about the price and the economics and the Medicare reimbursement, or are there other regulatory issues involved?
The FDA is in a terrible situation. Right now there are over 3,000 applications pending approval. They're staffed to do about 600. So there's a 5-year amazing amount of products that have to be approved. We're going to begin paying PDUFA fees. The question that everyone has is, how is those fees going to impact the roadblock that's sitting there with the old products? It's going to take the FDA an enormous amount of time to hire people, to train people. I don't see any significant changes until probably the end of 15. Right now, the average approval time on the injectable side is 31 months. There are some critical drugs that we're waiting for that are absolutely the highest priority for the FDA. We don't have any reason to believe at this point in time that we're getting any favorable actions by the FDA. We have one that's pending now that's going to be very interesting. We've been waiting for some time for a facility to be approved in India, and after that approval, about 4 very important products could be approved. We think that's all going to happen fairly quickly, and the question is, how quickly will that happen? And that will hopefully change my position on how focused the FDA is or not is on some of these critical products.
And the lead product is paclitaxel, is that right?
That's already approved.
That's approved.
We actually were asked by the agency to introduce that product. We introduced the product, but again, at the Medicare cap that product is reimbursed at, we would lose a significant amount of money. So it's not a significant product for us by any means.
So is your ability to network with all these manufacturers and get a lower cost of goods, is that part of your competitive advantage of being able to address this problem?
Yeah, number one is having the capability. We have 37 facilities in 23 countries that are approved by the FDA. All of them were approved on the first inspection. We have a comprehensive quality group that audits and controls these partners on an almost daily basis. We have incredible relationships with raw material suppliers, part of which is just the tenure of some of the people that I've had doing this. I myself has been sourcing raw materials since 1972. We have relationships with emerging companies in emerging countries like India, like China, that have a very, very low cost, and that should be reflected as we begin to market products in the United States. Many of the Indian companies, for example, are given subsidies by their governments if they're willing to employ 300 people. They get a lot of help from the government. We have also built our own facility with a joint venture partner in central China. It's a 300,000 square foot facility with what's called an isolator. And what we did is to make sure that we would be very, very comfortable with the quality coming out of that facility. We had a German company build a traditional filling line and encapsulated the entire line in a stainless steel and glass environment. The entire line is a class 100. It's completely robotic. There's no manual manipulation of any kind. So not only is it a guarantee that the quality is going to be the absolute highest, but more importantly, it will allow us to transfer products in from other facilities on what's called a CBE30 process. And the CBE30 process, without going through a bunch of details, is if it's going from an approved facility, and in this case to an even better facility, within 4 or 5 months, you can introduce a product versus maybe taking as long as 4 or 5 years. So we think that that'll have a significant impact on some products as we move forward.
And you also have an effort in Puerto Rico. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, actually next week I'm going with some senators and congressmen to have some meetings in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is attempting to get the tax incentives reinstated because they have all of these plants that are sitting in Puerto Rico that are pretty much not being used. They have a very skilled labor force, and we're fortunate enough to sort of be at the tip of this, and if we can help get that, we'd be in a position that we might be the poster child for that, and we would very much like to be in a position to maybe have our own facility. That gives us the flexibility of, one, reacting more to these shortage problems, and two, enhancing our margins without having to share anything with anybody else.
What would you say to, if Washington were watching this, what would you ask, what would you tell Congress, the President, what would be the reforms you'd want to see to alleviate this drug shortage problem? Is it as simple as getting rid of the Medicare ASP price cap, or is there some other reform that you'd want to see?
The most important thing is that, in order to, to supply these critical drugs, you have to be able to make money at it. And so I think that's the key step. And the last step is to try to help the FDA prioritize what's important, what isn't important. And there's no doubt in my mind, with only a few changes to the agency, they can move much quicker on critical products. That would be my suggestion.
Is there anything in the PDUFA legislation, you had mentioned the generic user fees, is there anything else in the PDUFA legislation that you see in Congress that addresses this issue?
Not really. And again, I'm being frank, I understand what they're trying to do. I have no problem with it. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to solve the short-term problem.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. It's very interesting what you're up to, and best of luck dealing with these shortages. A lot of patients are hoping to get these drugs.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.